Hello, if this is your first time to the channel, welcome. And if you've watched my videos before, welcome back. Today, I'm going to be making a face mask for the Scream symbiote. And this mask is not being given away, but is being gifted to Teak Mystique Cosplay on Instagram. If you want, go and check her out. Hopefully she will jump into her Scream cosplay again at some point and rock this. You can check that out on Instagram. And also, if you would like, stick around to the end of the video because I will be telling you how to enter the drawing for the riot mask. So details for that will be in the end of the video, and if you want patterns, links for that will be in the description, along with other affiliate links for products if you have trouble finding them locally. And without me rambling anymore, let's go ahead and just jump right into the video. Alright, I'll have all the main pattern pieces of the shell cut out here. 2 number 1s, 2 number 2s, and 2 number 3s. And next, I'm going to go ahead and glue them together using some DAP Weldwood contact cement. Okay, so if you haven't used contact cement before, the two brands that I specifically use and recommend would be DAP Weldwood contact cement or Barge contact cement. But you apply some of this to each side that you want to join together, and then once you do that, you let it sit for 15 to 20 minutes until the adhesive cures and is no longer wet and sticky, and then you line up your pieces and glue them together. Now that I have the two halves assembled, I'm going to go ahead and apply contact cement to the inside seams. As you'll notice, I did not put my registration marks on the center. That was a bad boy of me, but I didn't. However, they are on the patterns. Okay, so both halves are together, but it's a bit, Jabba the Hutt-ish. You want it round so it's going to actually conform to your face, and to achieve that, I'm going to use a heat gun. This is a dual setting heat gun. I'm going to have it on high. This is a rather inexpensive heat gun. You can of course buy a much nicer one. If you do get a cheapo one like this, they usually run $10 to $15 for something like Drill Master that you pick up from Harbor Freight. They don't last very long. 6 months to a year. This one actually had more than a year. Somehow have not burned it out. Okay, so that was some basic heat forming to get it this far. Now from here, I'm going to start to do specific areas, and what I mean is I'm going to start to push this in a bit here, All the stuff I previously did, I was heating rather large, broad areas all at once, getting a basic overall shape. But like for example, this piece here needs to curve in a bit more so it'll match up flush with this back piece, just little things like that. And all this I'm going to go and do off camera, but partially just because it takes so long. Essentially what I'll do is just a small space at a time, and then heat and shape that to the extent that I desire as far as how I want to tweak it or what I want to do with it. Alright, I finished all of the finalizing heat forming, which is mostly essentially just curving everything. I left this area here flat, but just curved underneath the eyes, above the eyes, behind the eyes, and all the way down the jaw. I did some of that, of course, with the initial heat forming, but going through with this is just making sure to get everything evened out and all that. And now I'm going to go ahead and move on to sanding down the seams and sanding in the grooves that I cut here for the teeth with my Dremel rotary tool. Okay, I've done all my sanding, which essentially amounts to just sanding off the seams here to get them to match up, and which I mean they did match up, but just get them a little bit smoother. And then same thing on all the seams. But then I also went through and used the Dremel to carve these grooves in to make gluing the teeth in a little bit easier. And when it's thinner like this, I glue the teeth in using super glue. And with it being thin like this, it's kind of easier to get sort of a gum look out of it whenever I glue them in too. That's part of the reason why I sand that thinner. It's not hard to do if you just make this straight and put in a gum pattern, similar to what I did with Venom. But for this, I just wanted the teeth exploding out of the face, much like with Carnage, since I feel like Scream is such a vicious symbiote, much like Carnage. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is make teeth. Now, for this one, I have the larger teeth in the center, and then I gradually make them smaller as I get out to the edges. And I've already made a bunch, but I'm going to show you here how I do it, which is cut the pattern out of 3mm EVA foam. Now, if you're in a hurry, or just don't feel like you need to draw out a bunch of teardrop shapes, I just freehand cut these to various lengths, heat them, and then glue them in however the heck I feel like. Part of the reason for that is each one I make is more unique, and ultimately I feel that makes it look more realistic and more believable. And there I have my little fang now. And like I said, I'm going to make a ton of these. So if you don't want to go about this, because this is slow and time consuming, and the sharper the points you make on your teeth, the more brittle ultimately they will be. However, I don't feel like this is on an area of the mask where it's going to have a lot of like traffic or other things just kind of like bashing into it. Not like something like on an arm brace or something that you're going to bump into stuff all day at a con, unless people are constantly touching your face. I'm not super worried about like durability in that sense, but a lot of people like to make this out of the EVA sculpt, and other people have even taken and made molds and cast all their teeth out of resin. Okay, and here it is with all the teeth glued in its horrific glory. And started off with some medium-sized ones, and then took the longer ones and glued them up a little higher and just kind of spaced them down till I hit the longest length, about 5 teeth out on each side from the center two. And then from there, I just made them smaller all the way back to the small size pattern. So that's how I choose to glue them in. And the smaller ones are all the same size for the most part. They're all medium up until the last 4 on each side. And this little gum divot here I left empty on both sides, and that is where the webbing material is going to hook in that I have also done on a bunch of my other symbiote masks. On Toxin, I went with something a bit more extreme, but with Carnage and Venom, I just did some simple pink webbing like that, and that's what I'm going to do with this mask as well. And as I previously mentioned, I use super glue to glue all the teeth in, which is why I have a bunch of it crusted along with bits of red EVA foam all over my fingertip. And now I'm going to take and seal over the tops of the teeth on the top and the bottom with a bead of hot glue from my glue gun. Okay, next I'm going to take some DAP ALEX PLUS, which is an all-purpose acrylic latex caulk plus silicone. Now, this is not the fast dry. The fast dry, however, I don't know if it really dries all that much faster, honestly, but one thing I will say about the difference between the two is that, for one thing, this stuff dries clear, so sometimes I will add paint to it just so I can get an idea when it's dry, because it'll be, say if I add red to it, it'll be pink, and when it dries, it comes out red because it's clear. It's just white now because it's still in its base form before drying. So one of the things about this is you can't really sand it. The fast dry you can. And on this, the only seam that I really want to cover mainly is this one right through the center here. The other ones here I'm not worried about, just mainly this one. There's going to be enough symbiote stuff coming up off the eyes and whatnot that I'm going to do with some slick paint and some puffy paint that I'm not really worried about those. But this center one I really want to get rid of. So I don't leave this in the tube. I take a caulking gun and I put it into a container. And what I'll do is take my finger, get a little bit on the tip, and then just spread that out. Okay, so next I have a container that's just filled with some tap water, and what I'll do is get the tip of my finger wet and then just smooth the stuff out, kind of like you would if you've ever done pottery or even something like that in art class at school. Very similar to that. Now, of course, this is acrylic, which means it is water-based, so as it dries, what's going to happen is it will shrink. So I generally have to put a few thin layers like this, but once I do those few thin layers, it usually covers it pretty well and never requires sanding. Okay, now that it's dry, it's cleared and it's pretty well filled in that gap. So next I'm going to take some Mod Podge and a brush, and I'm going to seal all this up. Okay, once it's sealed, I went ahead and primered everything black, and I actually didn't use an airbrush. I just used a brush and some black acrylic paint. However, this inside here is kind of tough. And if you look from the side, you can see the red foam in the back, of course. I just could have used black foam. However, I like there to be a contrast on film for everybody watching, and it's a little less boring when I have multicolored foam. So when I have the option to buy colors other than black, I do. But yeah, I'm going to have to go ahead and paint these up. I really don't want to try to paint all that with a brush, so I'm going to use my airbrush instead. Okay, so for the teeth, I did an overspray of yellow, kind of just fading it up to black, and then just did a little bit of createx opaque white on the tips of the teeth there. I was initially thinking of just leaving all the teeth black, but after looking at her cosplay and her original mask, which had white teeth and how they stood out, it was just really hard to not put some kind of color in them. So that's what I did. But I did fade them up to pretty much black by the top, so that pretty much just the tips are white with some yellow in between. Of course, I know there's no yellow on the mask, but of course there is on the body itself. Alright, next I'm going to make the little pink webbing that goes behind here. And for that, I just cut out some strips of EVA foam. They are about 5 inches long and about 2 inches, 2 1/4 in the front, and about 1 1/4 in the back. And it doesn't really matter even if you have this curve in it or not, because I heat this with the heat gun and just fold the crap out of it. And then from there, I'll just glue random points together using some super glue. I just use the regular old dollar store stuff. It's just your basic cyanoacrylate super glue. And once I have that done, I will then position it behind here, and I will glue it in basically from this point to this point. And if I need to, I will trim some down. It's always better to have more you can trim down than have less and try to piece it in. That's always kind of a pain in the butt. Alright, here it is now that I have glued those into both sides. So next, I need to put in lenses and cloth before I start doing puffy paint. And, well, technically slick paint. Apparently I can't talk. And then last, some polyurethane. Okay, so I'd gone out and purchased a brand new sheet of Source 1 1/8 inch thick acrylic plexiglass. And I was going to use that for the lenses, and I realized something. I'm making this for a person that isn't standing here for me to actually make adjustments on the mask so it fits her perfectly. So I needed it to be a little flexible, whether it needs to be a little wider or it needs to come in a little closer to her face. I'm going to need some sort of flexibility on the mask, and unfortunately the acrylic plexiglass does not allow for any sort of flexibility. It is rock solid. So what I ended up doing was taking and hot gluing in pieces that I cut from a 2-liter bottle. Yes, that's right, a 2-liter bottle. A clear 2-liter bottle that had soda in it. That's kind of my only option. But this way, like I say, the mask is pretty flexible still. Now, if this would get tweaked too far, of course, it would put a crease or a dent in the actual lenses. And, you know, that shouldn't happen under regular everyday use, though. At least I don't think so. And next, I'm going to take some of this sheer fabric that I have. I'm going to probably do 2 layers. Not probably, I am going to do 2 layers. I'm going to do just this on the outside because it's shiny and catches the light and is somewhat feminine. And Scream is typically female as far as that goes. And then I'm going to do a secondary layer that I'm going to paint white with my airbrush so that it can at least blot out her face so you won't see her eyes and such behind it. And I'm going to hot glue it in just like I hot glued in these pieces of 2 liter. Now, the 2 liter bottle had a curve in it, and the curve was more extreme than the mask. So I literally started like with the front here and just hot glued in just the tip, and then started working about a 1/4 inch or so at a time as I went back until I got the whole thing in. That's how I kept the mask even and didn't warp it or anything as I glued it in, was by just doing a little bit at a time. Alright, so I've glued on my fabric on the inside 2 layers. One that's totally normal, the other one I did airbrush white. And now I have some tulip slick paint that I'm going to use to put some symbiote looking stuff on this mask. Starting with the eyes. Alright, I finished putting on the puffy paint and also put some around the gum area. Now the way it looks now looks rather large and it's really standing out, but when it dries, it's going to actually shrink up a whole lot. So be prepared for that. It usually loses about half its size. Okay, so it's had about 16 hours to dry, and it has dried up, and you can see it has also shrunk up. Now I have gone through and applied a second amount to certain areas, like just bridging in between here, because all that shrunk up so much you couldn't even tell that I did it. And then there were some spots where you can see right there in between the teeth where it just kind of sunk in and there was a hole, so I filled all those, and I gotta wait for that to dry. And once that's dry, I'll go back through and do polyurethane, just like I did with my Carnage cosplay bodysuit or the last Carnage mask that I built on the channel. Okay, that was all time-lapse pretty fast, but you may or may not have noticed I used a very small brush to apply this in sections and then spread out as thin as possible because I don't want to take away from the detail that I put in with the puffy paint. Granted, the black of the face mask and the puffy paint is a little bit different shades, so you can still kind of see it, but the polyurethane, in particular the Flex Seal that I just used, has a quality of self-leveling, which is good in some cases, not so hot in others. But for this, I wanted it as thin as possible so it wouldn't end up self-leveling out all that detail. Okay, so that's going to pretty much wrap up the video. The polyurethane has fully dried, and I am now going to package this along with the mannequin head and send it off to her. And now on to the riot mask that I have here. I'm going to be giving away multiple things from symbiote masks to who knows what in the future as I make room for new projects. So if you are interested and would like to enter to win this, all you have to do is comment below and share this video, and you will be entered in the drawing. And as always, thank you everyone for watching. The end has come, but the drawing will be in an upcoming video, either at the end of this month, January 2020, or at the beginning of next month, February 2020. Most likely, though, I think at the end, because I'm already starting a new project for a new video. So stay tuned, and like I say, if you want to enter, just leave a comment below, share the video. If you're not a subscriber, please consider subscribing. And as always, I hope that I've inspired you and given you some ideas for your own cosplays and your own projects. And as always, thanks for watching. Have a great day.